The senator from Ohio.
I know that Senator Sessions wants to take the floor in a moment. I will be brief, but I wanted to thank Senator Booker for his always stirring words and for his sense of justice and fair play and leadership in so many ways. I met Jim about a year ago and had in a brief meeting, not too long after the court decision by Judge Black in the Cincinnati Southern District Court in Ohio. I just spent a half an hour with Jim in my office. He never wanted or he never expected to be famous. He never expected to come to Washington to meet with senators. He never expected to travel the country giving speeches. He was once a high school teacher. He jokes that, or people that have been with him as he's traveled the country joke that when he would speak to crowds of hundreds or even 1,000 about his experience with his beloved John and what's happened, he wishes the students had listened to him so closely. Without a pen, you can not hear a pin drop when he spoke to hundreds, not necessarily the case always as a high school teacher, but he wanted to live his life in a normal way as most Americans do. He never expected to have his story, his marriage, litigated before the United States Supreme Court. But that's really the mark of character, that Jim has taken his grief and his pain and helped to change the world, and that's what he's doing. His marriage is still not equal in my state of Ohio. I'm embarrassed by that. I was frankly embarrassed when Ohio 10 years ago passed a constitutional amendment outlawing same-sex marriage. I thought it was a terrible public policy mistake. I think that it left too many people behind and too many people heartbroken. Jim and his late husband, John Arthur's story is one of love and of sacrifice. Could happen to any one of us. It could happen to any of us. Frankly, it happens to too many families. So as Senator Booker pointed out, they flew to Maryland where John's aunt, Paulette Roberts, officiated their marriage on the tarmac in a medical plane. Paulette remarked, quote, "If marriage vows mean anything, then these two were more married than anyone I had ever known." That speaks to their commitment, it speaks to their love, it speaks to the seriousness with which they took their wedding vows. Just 3 months and the seriousness of the relationship for 20 years prior to that. Just 3 months and 11 days later, John passed away. Jim has been fighting for his marriage ever since. The question is, why should he have to do that? No one ever voted to allow my wife and Connie and me to stand before our family and acknowledge our love and commitment. When we were married, we were benefiting from a right not, get this, a right not extended to the minister who officiated our wedding. The woman who officiated at our wedding, Kate Huey, had a marriage, had had a commitment ceremony 18 years earlier. It wasn't until late last year that she traveled to New York with the woman she loved and was officially married, legally married in New York. You still can't do that in Ohio. It's outrageous that you can't do that in Ohio. I'm hopeful after Jim's case is argued a couple of weeks from now and the court hands that decision down, it will stop that bigotry and inequality that is hidden under the banner of tradition for far too long. Keep in mind, and Senator Booker, I thought, laid out a lot of this history very well. Ohio once passed laws to keep black people and white people from marrying. Ohioans came together like we always do. We rallied, we repealed that unjust and hateful anti-miscegenation law. We have a long history of fighting for justice and equality. We won't rest until we achieve that justice for Jim and for John. I look at the pages that sit before us who are mostly 16 and 17 years old. This is something that makes no sense to most of them. When I was talking to Jim earlier in my office, he had made a speech in Athens, Ohio, to Ohio University students. He told me most of them couldn't understand why state laws would prohibit somebody from marrying the person whom they love. They couldn't understand why the state government, the Ohio state government, would spend my tax dollars and Jim's tax dollars and the tax dollars of Hazel's parents, mother, the Page from Ohio, the tax dollars of all of us to fight this court battle so that Jim's marriage would be denied. If the Supreme Court rules in Jim's favor, and I think it will, Jim's name will go down in the history books, along with Roe as Roe v. Wade, and Brown versus Board of Education. It's not what Jim was after. It would be fitting for a love that spanned decades and was strong enough to carry Jim here to Washington. The moment has come for our Supreme Court to stand on the right side of history and join Americans who support marriage equality. As Senator Booker said, 37 states, the District of Columbia, now allow marriage equality. I don't like it that we have to rely on the Supreme Court to get my state to change its laws. We have politicians that look backward rather than forward. That's too bad. We have politicians that are willing to deny human beings basic rights, basic civil rights, basic rights of decency and fairness. I'm hopeful that Jim's courage and Jim's outspokenness and Jim's willingness to join on behalf of John in his fight and make this fight that will help change my state and help change our nation. And I know, Madam President, I can't look to the gallery and thank somebody, so I won't look to the gallery, but I'll still thank Jim from here, Madam President. I yield the floor.